Your mind is not broken. It is overstimulated. The chaos you feel is not weakness, it is overload. Most men think mental noise comes from stress, trauma, or anxiety. That is another lie. Mental chaos comes from too many internal voices fighting for control, thoughts arguing, emotions interrupting, impulses demanding reaction. The modern mind never rests, not because it cannot, but because it was never trained to stand still. The samurai understood this long before psychology tried to explain it. They called the solution Seishin Chōwa, mental harmony through internal command. Not calmness, not relaxation, control. This is stillness and direction. If you are here looking for quick relief or motivation, this will frustrate you. But if you want to silence mental chaos at its root, stay. And if this way of thinking speaks to you, like the video and subscribe, not for entertainment, but so you remain connected when the noise returns. The samurai did not silence the mind by fighting it. They silenced it by ending internal debate. Modern men argue with their thoughts. They analyze them. They negotiate with them. This multiplies noise. Every argument adds another voice. Seishin Chōwa begins with one brutal realization. The mind becomes loud when it is allowed to vote. The samurai did not give the mind a vote. They gave it a command. When emotion rose, it was acknowledged, not obeyed. When thought appeared, it was observed, not followed. Action came from decision, not feeling. This is why samurai could stand calm in chaos, not because they were peaceful, but because nothing inside them was competing for authority. Modern men suffer because everything inside them wants control at once. Fear says stop, desire says move, doubt says wait, ego says prove. No leader, only noise. Seishin Chōwa restored hierarchy. The warrior decided once who was in charge, and the rest of the mind learned obedience. This is why silence followed. Not empty silence, but ordered silence. The kind that allows clarity to surface. The modern world trains the opposite. Constant input, constant reaction, constant stimulation. Then it asks why men cannot think. The samurai trained men to remain unmoved by inner noise before they ever faced outer chaos. Because a man who cannot command his own mind will always be commanded by circumstance. This chapter is only the threshold. The disciplines ahead will show how Seishin Chōwa was trained daily, how authority over the mind was established, and why this method still works even when modern techniques fail. Because mental silence is not created, it is enforced. The first mistake modern men make is trying to fight their thoughts. They argue with them, they challenge them, they try to overpower them with logic. This feels productive, it feels disciplined. It is neither. The samurai learned early that the mind becomes louder the moment it is treated like an equal. Every time you debate a thought, you validate it. Every time you negotiate with emotion, you promote it. This is why mental chaos multiplies. One thought appears, you react. Another thought comments on the reaction. Then another judges the comment. Noise grows exponentially. Seishin Chōwa rejected this entirely. The samurai did not silence the mind by suppression, they silenced it by removing authority. A thought was allowed to exist, it was not allowed to command. This distinction changes everything. Modern psychology encourages expression. The samurai trained containment, not repression, containment. Repression buries emotion until it explodes. Containment allows it to exist without control. Fear could speak, doubt could appear, anger could rise. None of them were permitted to steer action. This is why the samurai mind appeared calm, not because it was empty, but because it was ordered. Order creates silence. The Japanese understood hierarchy instinctively. In a dojo, many voices exist, but only one command is followed. The mind works the same way. Seishin Chōwa established a single internal authority: decision. Not mood, not impulse, not emotion. Decision. Once a decision was made, the mind stopped debating. Debate exists only where authority is unclear. Modern men keep the mind loud because they never clarify who is in charge. They wake up undecided. They move emotionally. They react impulsively. Then they wonder why the mind never rests. The samurai made one rule clear: thoughts may speak, they may not vote. This removed internal democracy, and democracy inside the mind creates chaos under pressure. The samurai did not ask how they felt before acting. They acted and allowed feeling to follow. This reversed the noise cycle. Action reduces mental chatter. Hesitation multiplies it. This is why modern men feel most anxious when they delay and most calm after decisive movement. Seishin Chōwa formalized this truth. The method trained immediate obedience to decision, not blind obedience, deliberate obedience. The decision was made in stillness. Execution happened without commentary. This is where silence began. Not from meditation, not from breathing techniques, from clarity of command. When the mind knows who leads, it stops shouting. This chapter exposes why mental chaos persists, because you have been negotiating with something that was never meant to lead. The next discipline shows how the samurai trained this authority daily, even when emotion was strongest and clarity felt absent, because silence is not maintained by insight. It is maintained by structure. The samurai did not chase calm. They considered that childish. Calm is an effect. Authority is the cause. Modern men try to quiet the mind without ever deciding who is in charge of it. They meditate, they breathe, they distract themselves. And when pressure returns, the chaos comes back louder. The samurai solved this at the root. They established inner authority first. Seishin Chōwa was not about peace, it was about command. A warrior was trained to decide in stillness before emotion appeared, not in the moment of stress, not during chaos, before. This was critical, because once emotion rises, authority must already exist. You cannot negotiate leadership during a riot. The samurai trained decision-making in silence. Early mornings, still posture, no stimulation. The purpose was not reflection, it was clarification. What will I do when fear appears? What will I do when doubt speaks? What will I do when discomfort demands escape? These decisions were made once. After that, they were executed automatically. This is why samurai did not think under pressure. They acted. Thinking was finished beforehand. Modern men attempt the opposite. They wait until stress arrives and then try to figure themselves out. That is why the mind panics. Uncertainty is loud. Authority is silent. The samurai did not remove emotion. They removed its decision-making power. Fear could exist. It did not choose. Desire could exist. It did not steer. The warrior acted from principle, not impulse. This created something rare: internal order. Once order existed, noise lost its fuel. Thoughts still appeared, but they no longer competed. There was nothing to compete with. Modern men confuse calm with absence of thought. The samurai knew calm comes from absence of conflict. Conflict only exists when authority is unclear. Seishin Chōwa clarified authority brutally. One leader, one direction, one command. Everything else became background noise. This is why samurai could sit unmoving while chaos unfolded around them, not because they were detached, but because they were decided. Indecision multiplies thoughts. Decision collapses them. This is also why mental chaos feels worst when you are avoiding something. Avoidance creates internal debate. Debate creates noise. Action ends debate. The samurai trained action as a tool for mental silence, not frantic action, correct action. Once action aligned with decision, the mind followed. This chapter reveals a hard truth. You cannot silence the mind until you remove its authority. And authority cannot be removed gradually. It must be claimed. The next discipline shows how the samurai enforced this authority daily, especially when emotions were strongest and resistance was loudest, because authority that is not enforced decays, and mental silence does not maintain itself. The samurai understood something modern men refuse to accept. Mental silence is not created by thinking. It is created by obedience. You do not calm the mind by explaining things to it. You calm it by moving correctly despite the noise. Most men try to silence chaos internally first. They wait to feel calm before acting. That order is backwards. Seishin Chōwa enforced silence from the outside inward. Action came first. Silence followed. When the mind argued, the body moved. When doubt appeared, posture was corrected. When fear spoke, the breath slowed and action continued. No discussion. The samurai treated inner noise like background weather. Acknowledged, ignored. This is why they trained the body so intensely. Not for strength, for authority. The body was taught to obey command instantly. No hesitation, no emotional permission. Once the body moved correctly, the mind lost its leverage. Modern men sit still while their minds run wild. The samurai moved while their minds learned to be quiet. This reversed the relationship. The mind followed the body, not the other way around. Seishin Chōwa relied heavily on ritualized action. Fixed wake times, fixed movements, fixed sequences. Not because ritual was spiritual, but because repetition teaches obedience. When the same action is executed daily, the mind stops arguing. There is nothing to debate. Debate only exists where choice exists. The samurai removed choice through ritual. This is why their days looked simple from the outside. Simple days produce silent minds. Modern men crave novelty. Novelty creates stimulation. Stimulation creates chaos. The samurai preferred repetition. Repetition creates predictability. Predictability creates control. Control creates silence. When emotions surged, the warrior did not pause to analyze it. He completed the next correct action. This starved the emotion of attention. Attention is fuel. Remove fuel and the fire dies. The samurai knew this instinctively. They did not suppress emotion. They outlasted it through action. This discipline was harsh because it denied the ego what it wanted most: attention. Modern mental chaos is not caused by thoughts. It is caused by over-attention to thoughts. The samurai cut attention away and placed it on execution. This is why Seishin Chōwa worked even in extreme conditions. Battlefields, loss, isolation. Where thinking would have destroyed them, action saved them. This chapter reveals the truth most men avoid. Mental silence is not passive, it is enforced. And enforcement requires discipline. The next discipline completes the method, because action alone is not enough if standards collapse when fatigue arrives. The final chapter shows how the samurai preserved inner silence over long periods, even when nothing felt dramatic and the noise tried to return. The samurai knew something most men never learn. Mental chaos does not return with noise. It returns with retreat. Not external retreat. Internal retreat. Lowering standards. Breaking form. Letting the mind renegotiate authority. This is where silence collapses. Most men can enforce control briefly. Very few can maintain it when fatigue sets in. Seishin Chōwa was designed for this exact weakness. The The samurai trained men to recognize the first signs of internal retreat: shortened breath, sloppy posture, mental commentary creeping back in. These were treated as violations, not emotionally, structurally. Correct posture immediately. Return to the breath. Continue the next correct action. No reflection, no justification. The samurai understood that the mind always looks for an exit when pressure becomes boring. Not painful, boring. Silence feels uncomfortable to the ego because the ego survives on commentary. So when silence deepens, the ego attempts to re-enter through excuses. You deserve rest. You've done enough. This isn't necessary anymore. The samurai did not argue with these thoughts. They ignored them, because authority had already been decided. This is why Seishin Chōwa was preserved through consistency, not insight. Insight fades, consistency endures. Modern men lose silence because they keep reopening negotiation. They treat discipline as temporary, as a phase, as something to return to later. The samurai treated discipline as identity. There was no later. Silence was not something they entered. It was something they protected. Protected from comfort, protected from emotion, protected from internal democracy. This is why the method worked over long periods, months, years, entire lifetimes. Mental silence became the default state, not because the mind was empty, but because it knew better than to interfere. The samurai accepted one final truth. The mind will always test authority, daily, relentlessly, and authority must be reinforced without emotion every single time. This is where modern methods fail. They promise relief. The samurai demanded obedience. Relief fades. Obedience compounds. By this stage of training, mental chaos had nowhere left to return. No debate, no retreat, no reopening of command, only execution. The final chapter completes the method, because even with authority, action, and endurance, silence can still be broken if a man becomes attached to outcome, and the samurai removed that completely. The final threat to mental silence is not noise, it is expectation. The samurai understood that the mind becomes loud again the moment it starts asking for results. Am I calmer now? Is this working? How long will this last? These questions reopen authority. They invite commentary. They invite judgment. They invite the future back into the present. Seishin Chōwa ended this permanently by removing outcome from the equation. The samurai did not practice mental harmony to feel a certain way. They practiced correct conduct regardless of how they felt. Silence was not a goal, it was a byproduct. This is why modern men fail at calm. They monitor themselves constantly, checking mood, measuring peace, evaluating progress. This creates noise. The samurai refused self-surveillance. They asked only one question: am I acting correctly? If posture was correct, breath was correct, action was correct, the mind was irrelevant. Outcome did not matter. Silence arrived on its own because nothing was being demanded from it. This is the final discipline. When you stop asking the mind to deliver an experience, it stops performing. When you stop measuring silence, it deepens. Expectation is pressure. Pressure creates commentary. Remove expectation, and the mind has nothing left to say. Musashi understood this intuitively. He wrote that the man who seeks stillness will never find it, but the man who seeks correctness will discover stillness waiting for him. This is why Seishin Chōwa endured, not as a technique, not as a mindset, but as a way of living. Decide authority once. Enforce it through action. Preserve it without negotiation, and remove outcome completely. What remains is not emptiness, it is order. Ordered minds are quiet, not because thoughts are gone, but because they know their place. This is mental silence that does not depend on mood, does not collapse under pressure, does not disappear when life becomes loud. It stays. Because it was never created, it was enforced. And once enforced long enough, it becomes permanent. This is the forgotten samurai method. Not calming, not comforting, effective. And once you understand it, mental chaos can never fully return because it has nowhere left to stand.